The adrenal glands are paired organs located just superior to the kidneys. The outer portion of the adrenal gland is the adrenal cortex, which contains three major zones. The zona glomerulosa, which is the outermost layer, produces aldosterone. Aldosterone is a mineralocorticoid involved primarily in sodium balance, potassium balance, and extracellular fluid volume. Its secretion is regulated mainly by angiotensin II and extracellular potassium. The zona reticularis, which is the innermost layer of the cortex, produces adrenal androgens. The zona fasciculata, which is the middle layer, produces cortisol, the major glucocorticoid. The adrenal medulla produces catecholamines, particularly epinephrine and norepinephrine. For this lecture, our main focus will be the zona fasciculata and cortisol. Cortisol secretion is regulated by the hypothalamic-pituitary-adrenal axis, or HPA axis. The hypothalamus releases corticotropin-releasing hormone, or CRH. CRH travels through the hypothalamic-pituitary portal circulation to the anterior pituitary, where it stimulates the release of adrenocorticotropic hormone, or ACTH. ACTH then enters the systemic circulation and travels to the adrenal cortex, where it stimulates cortisol synthesis and secretion from the zona fasciculata. Cortisol negatively feeds back on both the hypothalamus and anterior pituitary, decreasing CRH and ACTH secretion. As for what regulates the release of cortisol, the HPA axis has a strong circadian rhythm. It's released in intermittent pulses, meaning it predictably fluctuates, with the greatest secretion occurring in early morning hours and the lowest in the evening. Physical and psychological stress can strongly activate the HPA axis and increase cortisol secretion. ADH can also enhance ACTH release. One major function of cortisol is to help maintain circulating energy substrates during fasting and physiologic stress. Cortisol promotes gluconeogenesis in the liver, allowing the liver to produce glucose from non-carbohydrate substrates. In skeletal muscle, cortisol increases protein breakdown and decreases protein synthesis. Both of these serve to increase the availability of amino acids for gluconeogenesis. Cortisol also promotes lipolysis, the release of fatty acids and glycerol from adipose tissue. In addition, cortisol antagonizes some of the actions of insulin in peripheral tissues and reduces insulin-stimulated glucose utilization. The overall metabolic effect of cortisol is to help maintain glucose and other energy substrates in the circulation. Cortisol also has important effects on the cardiovascular system. It has a permissive effect on vascular responsiveness to catecholamines, helping maintain vascular tone and blood pressure. Cortisol has strong anti-inflammatory and immunosuppressive effects. These actions help explain why synthetic glucocorticoids are useful medications for inflammatory and autoimmune diseases. Chronic glucocorticoid excess can also adversely affect bone, connective tissue, and skin. When the body is exposed to excessive glucocorticoid activity for a prolonged period of time, the resulting condition is called Cushing's syndrome. Cushing's syndrome is an umbrella term describing the presence of excess glucocorticoids, or hypercortisolism, and can have several causes. When Cushing's syndrome is specifically caused by a pituitary ACTH secreting tumor, the condition is called Cushing's disease. In ACTH-independent Cushing's syndrome, an autonomous cortisol-producing adrenal lesion may secrete excessive cortisol. Another important cause is exogenous glucocorticoid administration. We refer to this as iatrogenic or physician-caused. Patients may receive medications such as prednisone or methylprednisone for inflammatory or autoimmune disorders. These medications activate glucocorticoid receptors and reproduce many of the physiologic effects of cortisol. For completeness' sake, understand that in addition to these conditions, there are conditions in which abnormal tissue, including certain tumors, can produce ACTH and cause Cushing's syndrome. So an elevated ACTH level does not necessarily mean the source is the pituitary. The discussion of what other types of abnormal tissue may produce ACTH is beyond what we need to cover in this course, but you may encounter that later in pathophysiology. Many of the manifestations of Cushing syndrome can be predicted from the normal actions of cortisol. Because cortisol promotes gluconeogenesis and antagonizes insulin's actions, chronic excess can produce hyperglycemia, glucose intolerance, or diabetes. By increasing vascular responsiveness to catecholamines, excess cortisol can contribute to hypertension. Because cortisol promotes catabolism, patients may develop muscle wasting and proximal muscle weakness. This is often most noticeable in the thighs. Patients may have difficulty standing from a chair or climbing stairs. Glucocorticoid excess also decreases collagen and connective tissue integrity. The skin becomes thin and fragile. This may result in easy bruising, as shown in this picture. Weakening of the dermis, a layer of the skin, contributes to the characteristic broad violaceous stria seen in Cushing syndrome. These are abdominal stria. Chronic glucocorticoid excess can also cause characteristic redistribution of adipose tissue. Fat can accumulate in the face, producing round facial features, sometimes referred to as a moon facies. We can also see increase in abdominal fat, as was demonstrated in the previous picture, as well as fat distribution in the interscapular area, referred to as a buffalo hump, shown here. The HPA axis feedback relationship allows us to predict several hormonal patterns. Just as we saw in the evaluation of thyroid disease, in looking at TSH and thyroid hormones, the HPA axis feedback relationship also allows us to predict several hormonal patterns. Here we'll look at various potential patterns that result in hypercortisolism. If ACTH is elevated, we refer to this process as ACTH dependent. The ACTH source may be the pituitary, in which case we would have Cushing's disease. The chronic stimulation by ACTH of the adrenal cortex results in the gland increasing in size. If an adrenal lesion is present and is autonomously producing excess cortisol, cortisol is high and ACTH will be low. This is ACTH-independent cortisol excess. As a result of decreased ACTH stimulation of the adrenal gland, the remaining gland becomes smaller or atrophies. With exogenous glucocorticoid exposure, glucocorticoid activity is increased while ACTH and endogenous cortisol production are suppressed. As a result of decreased ACTH stimulation of the adrenal gland, the remaining gland becomes smaller or atrophies. With exogenous glucocorticoid exposure, glucocorticoid activity is increased. Hence, we have the arrow showing an increase in cortisol. This is signifying the increased glucocorticoid activity. But in reality, the ACTH and endogenous production of cortisol is decreased. As a result of the decreased ACTH stimulation of the adrenal gland, the remaining gland becomes smaller or atrophies. The key concept covered in this slide is that ACTH helps us classify endogenous cortisol excess as either ACTH dependent, as shown in the first example, or ACTH independent, as shown in the latter two examples. Now let's move to the opposite end of the spectrum and consider inadequate adrenal cortical hormone production. We'll be focusing on primary adrenal insufficiency. What's indicated by this is that the problem creating the insufficiency originates in the adrenal cortex itself. Because multiple layers of the adrenal cortex may be affected, patients can have deficiencies in cortisol, aldosterone, and adrenal androgens. When cortisol falls, negative feedback on the hypothalamus and anterior pituitary decrease. As a result, ACTH rises. This is the typical pattern seen in primary adrenal insufficiency: low cortisol and elevated ACTH. Manifestations of primary adrenal insufficiency are due to a deficiency in the normal actions of cortisol, aldosterone, and androgens. Cortisol deficiency reduces the body's ability to maintain glucose availability during fasting and stress. Therefore, they have a tendency toward hypoglycemia. They may also experience weakness, lethargy, hyperkalemia, hyponatremia, and salt craving. These are all related to electrolyte abnormalities due to a decrease in aldosterone. Also, as a result of decreased aldosterone, we may see hypovolemia. The loss of permissive effects with regards to catecholamines combined with hypovolemia can contribute to hypotension. Because of cortisol's importance in the stress response, patients may demonstrate decreased tolerance to physiological stress. A final classic symptom involved with primary adrenal insufficiency is hyperpigmentation. Because cortisol is low, negative feedback decreases and ACTH increases. ACTH is derived from a larger precursor protein that also gives rise to other signaling molecules, including melanocyte-stimulating hormone. As a result of increased ACTH, melanocytes are stimulated and pigmentation increases. Hyperpigmentation may be especially notable in areas such as the palmar creases, oral mucosa, and gingiva. This finding is characteristic of primary adrenal insufficiency because of the elevation in ACTH. ACTH does more than stimulate cortisol production. It also has trophic effects on the adrenal cortex. With chronic ACTH stimulation, the cortex can undergo hypertrophy and hyperplasia. Conversely, because ACTH has a trophic effect on the adrenal cortex, chronically decreased ACTH may lead to cortical atrophy. This is important to understand when due to exogenous cortisol. If exogenous steroids are stopped abruptly after prolonged use, the atrophic adrenal cortex may not produce enough cortisol. In this case, the patient may develop symptoms of acute adrenal insufficiency, including fatigue, weakness, nausea, vomiting, dizziness, or hypotension, and sometimes hypoglycemia. In light of this, for patients who have been on chronic steroids, if they're going to be discontinued, they need to be slowly weaned over an extended period of time to allow the atrophic adrenal cortex to return to normal.